Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the YouTube channel grecochess. I'm your host, Karilaos Eniziris. This is a channel about the game of chess, and in this video, we'll go back once again to the puzzle rush. As I have mentioned, after we eliminate every bot, chess bot of chess.com, we take a break with the puzzle rush. In the previous video, we had completed defeating Ali from Indonesia. And before we start with Matteo from Argentina, time for another puzzle rush. What exactly is that? Let me first share the screen with you. Chess.com is going to give us one puzzle after another until we get three puzzles wrong. Let's see how many can we do. Until now, our record is 44. Can we do better than that? We've had 28 was the minimum. We've always been between 28 and 44. Let's hope we can do better than that. And as we do, I encourage all of the viewers to pause when you see the puzzle and try to think yourselves to see if you can find the answer. And then I'm going to discuss my thoughts, if we get it right, if we get it wrong. And in the end, we're going to go back to the three that we missed and see what was the correct answer. And let's start with puzzle number one. I'm hitting the play button. You see, it's survival mode, meaning that we don't have time constraints. And we have, if I'm correct, the white pieces. And I think here there is only one solution. We take the black rook. Yes, there's no other solution. Here we can take the knight at f6 and then is there follow-up? Either we take the rook on h8 or the knight on e7, depending on how black replies. Take the knight. Next one, this is a back rank story. There are plenty of back ranks in the early puzzles, the easy ones. All you have to do, when you see the king covered by three pawns in front, all you have to do is make sure there is a queen or a rook at the 8th rank, or first if you're black, and checkmate. And here we are. Another back rank issue, rook goes to b1. Takes the rook on c1, takes the one on e1, and we're finished. Here, what do we do? It's a similar background story, but without the bishop on c5 would be impossible. But with the bishop on c5, we can send the rook on to f8 and this checkmate, because the bishop on c8 does not allow the rook on a8 to intervene. This is not exactly a back rank, but it is a case of one move checkmate. I believe the rook from f8 goes to f2, supported by the bishop on e3, and it should be checkmate. The white king is surrounded by its own pieces and pawns. This is what is called the lateral mate. The queen from f2 will go to b2 check. King goes to a4 and then queen goes to a2. Two moves mate. Yes, that's it. Here, a case of a back rank where you have to sacrifice the queen so the rook can deliver the mate. But it needs three moves. First, queen goes to c2 check. King goes to a1. Queen goes to c1 check. It's taken by the rook, and now rook goes to c1. This is checkmate. This is a case, an opening trap. If you're not careful and you allow the black queen to check, if you're white and you're not careful and you allow the black queen to check from h4, is what's happening. If you don't want to move your king, if you move your king, you lose castling rights. But sometimes it might be better than what's happening here, because here by uh, pushing the pawn to g3, you temporarily attack the queen, but queen goes to e4 and then wins the rook on h1. And we got it. What can we do here? It's two move. Checkmate. You see, black, the problem of black is that they opened the too much. They pushed unnecessarily the F, G, and H pawns, but this gives white the chance for two move checkmate. First move, bishop from E2 goes to H5. If rook takes it, now no, it's three moves. The queen takes it, now the bishop intervenes, but now checkmate. Another case of a checkmate, because you have the bishop on D6 that is going to support the queen that will go to H2. Here what's happening? It should be in two moves. Rook from H7 goes to H3 check. Pawn from G2 takes the rook, and then queen goes to H3 and it's mate. Because the rook on G1 does not allow the king to escape. We completed the first 12. You see the first row, all of them correct. We're starting the second. What are we supposed to do here? You see that that white is ready to checkmate if we give them the chance, because the queen on G6 goes to G7, supported by bishop on C3, it's mate. So black needs to do something. Like what? They need to check, not just do something. If queen goes to from D3 to E3, it's a check. But how can white reply? If they move the king to F1, bishop goes to from C6 to B5 check. Knight will intervene from D2 to C4, then bishop takes knight is mate. What if king goes to H1 instead? Queen goes to from E3 to E1 check. Knight will go to F1 and it's mate. Anything else? I don't think so. Yes. Here we are. Queen will go to E1. Knight F1 and it's mate. Good. Let's see what white can do. Once again, if white is not careful, black queen goes from F2 to F1 and it's mate immediately. If queen goes from D5 to E5 check, king, oh. If king goes to G8, bishop from C2 goes to B3, a pawn may delay for one move, but it's mate. What if the bishop goes to from F8 to G7? Queen goes to E8 check, bishop from G7 back to F8, queen to F8 mate. Let's see if this is the case. Bishop goes here. That's a mate. Good. Finish 14, the 15th now. Once again, be careful. If black does nothing, queen goes from H1 to F1 with the bishop. King will go to D7 and queen will win the knight on H6. There are other ways, but clearly white will win a lot of material. It's not mate, I think, but there's a lot of material at stake. So what should black do? If queen goes from D8 to E7, check. White has only one legal move, if I'm correct. King goes from E1 to D1, and then queen goes to E2 and it's mate. Let's see if this is the answer. I say always let's see, because you never know, there could be answers when you least expect them. Yes, that's it. Didn't even wait for that. What can black do here? Queen goes from E7 to E3 check. And no matter what white does, the king can go G1, H1 or F1, then queen takes the rook on C1. Let's see if this is the answer. Yes. Here, we have to sacrifice, I think. Rook from H6 goes to H2 check. King takes the rook, and then queen from D8 goes to H4, and it should be mate. Yes. Next one. If rook goes from H6 to H7 check, if king goes to the 6th rank, whether D6 or F6, then rook goes to D7 or F7 is mate. What if king goes to the 8th rank? Then we win the rook on on A8. The rook goes to H8 check, and there is a skewer. We win the rook on A8. Good. Next one. If bishop goes from c5 to b6, I think it is mate in one move. Where can black escape? Not to c8, not to c7, d7, e7. No, I think it's mate. Bishop goes from c5 to b6. Yes. Here, if bishop goes from c4 to f7 check, black can only take the rook, but the queen will take the rook and it's mate. Good, we got 20 out of 20. Let's see how well can we continue. Here, who plays? It's white. If in doubt, you can always see the letters if they go from A to H down or from H to A. So it's white to play. But how can it check? They can check with the queen or with the rook. The best is with the rook if it goes to the f7. That's my first instinct because it's covering because the queen will stay at the g file and cover it. Because if we send the queen to f7 or f5, then king can escape on the g file. So we're going to put the rook on f7. Yes. And now queen goes all the way down from g6 to g1. I think it's mate. Yes. Here what's happening. If here there is no mate, but one has to be very careful with tactics because material, do they start with the same material? Yes. Queen, two rooks, or two bishops, two knights, and let's look at the pawns. 7 pawns each side. Of course, it would not be a problem if the best thing black would do is just exchange the bishops on h6 instead. If knight from c6 takes on d4, if queen takes back, then the bishop on c7 wins the one on h6 with a check. But what if the bishop on h6 goes to g7? Then the knight from d4 goes to e2, takes the bishop with a check, and after white, the queen or the knight on c3, one with the other, takes a knight, then the bishop on g7 will win the one on h6. Let's see if this is the answer. We got it. Now, this is a problem because black is checking white. So white doesn't have too many legal moves. The king from e3 can only go to d2 or e2. Which is the best? From the instinct, you say that d2 is better. No, because the bishop cannot check, but then the rook can go to f2. No, that's not what we want. We want the king to go to e2, so it is continuing to attack the rook. You see that the white king would take the black rook if the bishop was not on g2, but if the king goes to e2, the white rook on g1 threatens the bishop on g2, and if the bishop goes anywhere, we win the black rook. Yes? Now what do we do? We cannot just take the bishop with the rook because then the rook will take our rook. What's going to happen is that the king will go from e2 to f2 and will win one out of the two pieces, even if the black checks with the rook from e7 to f7. I think that is the answer. Yes, now we take here we are. We got it. Until now we have 23. Let's see, can we finish the second row successfully? 24 out of 24. Here we have to be careful. It looks like back rank, but not exactly. Because the white queen from e4 can neither go to e7 or be taken by the bishop on f6, not to e8 will be taken by the rook on d8. What if the queen goes to e8 check, rook takes it, bishop goes to d6 check? The one on f6 will block. What if the bishop goes to d6 check? Yes. If rook takes a bishop, then queen to e8, it's mate. If bishop goes from f6 to e7, then we'll win the bishop. I think that should be the answer. Yes? And now all we have to do is the background story. Queen goes here, is sacrificed, and rook checkmate. So we completed 24 to 24. You see both these two rows, starting from 160, the easiest, to 1329, the toughest. This the approximate rating points, meaning I think what it means that if you have this rating, you have a 50% chance to solve the puzzle. We finished the first 24, and now we start the third row without any errors. That's wonderful. What can we do here? Do we have back rank? Almost. If rook from d7 goes to d1, check. Rook a1 or knight c3 will take it. Second rook goes there, check. No, if knight takes it, queen goes to e1, mate. If rook takes it, second rook check, knight takes, then the queen goes to e1, mate. I think that's the case. Yes. Now queen is free to go to e1, mate. Good. What do we do now? Beware, beware. Rook on b2 is under threat from the bishop on c1. We can easily win the knight on e2, but what's the material? Both sides have a queen, both sides have two rooks. Black has a knight, white has bishop and knight, so white has an extra bishop and pawns. White has two extra pawns, so even if we win the knight, it doesn't mean too much because we are still 2 pawns down. Check, I don't see how we can do a check or threaten with a mate. What else can we do? We cannot check, no matter. The best for time being seems if the rook from b2 takes a knight on e2. And then, that's a question. Of course, we have a very strong attack. We're still 2 pawns down, but we have two of our pieces inside black's territory. Can we attack the white queen? If we could win the queen, it would be wonderful. The rook from b2 to go to b4 would be taken by the pawn on c4. The knight from d3 to c5 will be taken by the pawn on d4. I think. What if bishop d3 takes, actually knight d3 takes bishop c1? No, then the knight f2 will take it. I think we must start with the rook taking the knight. I cannot see anything else. Yes. But we have a follow-up. We only did the first move. And the rook in e2 is in danger. What can we do? You see now both sides have queen, two rooks, one light piece, but white has 6 pawns, black has five. We're down 1 pawn, not two, but still we're down. If rook goes to g2 with a check, wins the pawn, a king takes the rook, then queen cannot go to g4 because there's a black queen waiting. If queen goes to g4, we threaten with mate on g2. How can white stop it other than sacrificing the queen on d1, taking the rook on e2? They may put the rook on f2, but then we win the exchange. Another will take it. Now we win the queen. That's it. What are we supposed to do here? White has very, very dangerous attack. Even though materially we are ahead, I think we have. No, we're not. 5. If anything, we're pawn down with double pawns. But rook can go from f8 to f2 check. King goes to g1. Then we have to wait. We have to prepare the rook goes to g2. But really, if it can go anything else, if rook from if knight from g4 goes to h2 check, doesn't seem too promising. I think let's start with the check on f2 and then we'll send the knight on h4 to prepare for the check on g2. Yes. Now, if the knight goes to h4 check, I'm not sure how I can stop it unless they put the rook on e2 and lose the rook. Yes. Now we have two moves made. G2 check. H2 check. We can win these 2 pawns. Anything better? Can we do a check? If knight from h4 goes f3 to check, but we're going to lose. I think we need to take the pawn. Yes. Oh, we got it. 27. Now let's see this one. We have knight and 2 pawns. The opponent has rook. Oh, that is one of these crazy endings. Go 27 correct. Let's hope we can do as many as possible. If we push the pawn to f3, sacrifice the knight, pawn goes to f2 check, king goes to f1, pawn to g2 check. Not so easy. Any good thing that if we push the pawn to f3, that white has only one reply. Basically, that makes sense. If you go to f for f3 check, king goes to f1, pawn to g2 check. Cannot even go there because the pawn on g3 is pinned. We're not supposed to sacrifice the knight. What if first we send the pawn? Yeah. Can we do anything else? What if a knight goes to g2? That is going to be a tough one. Candidate moves. Pawn to f3, sacrifice the knight, see what we can do. It doesn't seem we can do too much. Pawn to f2 check, king to f1, king to h2, hoping for pawn to g2. Let's see if this is the answer. If it starts with pawn to f3, this is a big decision because in a real game, if you sacrifice your knight and it doesn't work, that's it. Even though 2 pawns in the 6th rank are usually very strong, or third if because we're talking about black. Yes, yes. King goes to h2, yes. Pawn to g2 check, and we get a queen. Got it. Not easy, but we got it. Here, the knight on c3 is pinned by a bishop on b4. Can we take advantage? What if a knight from f6 goes to e4? Have a very strong attack, but not that strong yet. We are going to have a fork. What if the pawn from e5 takes on d4? It attacks simultaneously knight f3, queen d3. And of course, the knight on c3 is pinned and cannot take it. And if queen takes it, the knight on f6 will take it. As far as I see, this seems to be the answer. Yes. Now we are going to exchange on c3 and we're going to win the knight on f3. Ooh, we have to be careful. Black has an attack. They check from c6. If we move a king, or if we block with a queen, we lose the rook on a8. Instead, we're going to use a bishop here. Yes, we got it. Here, dangerous attack of white near the end. If rook goes from h5 to h7 check, he has to take it, nothing else. And then rook goes to h1 check, bishop will go to h2, and then we win. Takes the bishop, it's mate. Yes, yes, it doesn't be, yes. Finish 30 without any errors. Here, if queen goes from d3 to d7, is it mate? Because the bishop on f8 is blocking. The bishop on f8 is blocked. And we need to do it now, otherwise the pawn promotes. The black pawn from f2 goes to f1. Yes. If queen goes from f2 to g3, we are threatening mate. How can black stop it? They can check, of course, on d2. but I think there is no follow-up check. Yes, if in a real game, I would move my queen from f2 to g3 for the check, not for the check, for the mating threat, and take the knight to b. Yes, that's it. Here, if the queen was not on c3, the black queen, the white bishop would go from h6 to g7's mate. But if they do it, they are going to lose the bishop. There'll be a check and they'll be losing. But can we block the path of the queen from c3 to g7? The only way I can see it is we push the pawn to f6. Yes, the pawn promotes mate 2 to a1, but the bishop goes to g7 with a mate. Now, how to take it? Not with the king, because you have to be careful how to take it, because if it doesn't lead to a mate, the pawn from mate 2 goes to a1 and black has another queen. That's why we cannot take it to the king, because then we give access to the g8 square to the black king. So we take with the pawn, and now the bishop goes to d7 checkmate. Great. Finish 33. Can we do more? If queen goes from f4 to g3 check, king can go to f2. If queen goes to h2 check, the only answer is the bishop goes from f3 to g2 to cover it, and then queen takes bishop. Yes. If queen goes from f5 to f7 check, king goes to h8. No, there's something better. Queen goes to g6. If king goes to f8, f7 mate. If king goes to h8, queen h6 mate. Yes. Here we have a possibility for a discover check, if anything, a possibility for a double check, because we have both a queen and a rook. Queen on b6 and rook on e3 are under attack. The queen is attacked by the rook on b5 and a rook by the queen on d2. So if we do a double check, it doesn't matter if both can be taken. They cannot be taken in one move. So king goes to e1 mate. We got 36. We finished the first 3 rows, all of them correct, no problems. Here, what are we supposed to do? Let's see, can we exceed the 44? If a pawn takes a queen, rook takes queen, rook takes. A pawn will go to b2 and promote. After we exchange, the material is even, because both sides will win. In fact, we start with the knight down, so we better make sure that the exchanges go correct. First, let's take the queen. You'll see what will happen. After the exchanges, the pawn on b3 goes to b2 and gets promoted. The rook cannot go to b6 to stop it because of a pawn on a7. Here we go. Okay, we reply to the check. Is there a better way to reply? We have to be careful, because without a check, really the rook could not stop the pawn. Here, if the king goes to h7, rook goes to b1. If we block it with a rook, no, yes, then the rook from, no, to b8. If the king goes to h7, rook goes to b8 and wins the pawn. If the rook goes to f8, yes, we win it, and now the pawn promotes. Good. This was a tricky one. What can we do here? If rook from d8 goes to d1 check, king goes to c2. If queen goes to g6 check, pawn can stop. But the problem is that the king can go to b3 and escape. But what if queen first goes to g6 check? I think White can block with a pawn or with a queen, but that's it. I think first queen goes to g6 check. Queen takes a pawn f5 check, and it's mate. Here, queen is 38. I don't think we've ever done 38 without any error. Let's see the material. Both sides have queen, two rooks, and a knight. Pawns. White has 5, black has 5. Black is double, so white is slightly ahead. But white has a queen under threat. This is a tricky one because if rook from d1 takes a knight on d5, black will win the white queen. That's not it. If queen from a4 takes a rook on e8 check, if queen goes from a4 to c6, I think they are winning something because they attack the knight on d5, and if it moves, we win the queen on d8. Seems to be this most likely answer. Yes, we got it. And now we win the knight on d5. Yes, and we take it back. Good, we got 39. They're not so easy as we continue. If bishop from d6 takes pawn on h2 check, king takes bishop, and then queen goes from e7 to h4 check, and then we win the bishop on g4. Anything better? I don't think the queen can go for mate. If you go to h4 trying to mate, no, I think that's even better because look what's happening. We have double attack. We have both attack the bishop on g4 and the rook on e1. Yeah, we win at least a bishop. I think queen goes to h4. Let's see if this is the answer. Yes. Oh, check. King goes to, there are two answers. Either king goes to h8 or rook to f7. I think king goes to h8. Now what can we do? Cannot mate. Cannot mean any material. But if bishop goes to g3 and the pawn on h takes on g3, the next check, and we win the rook on e1. Let's see if this is the answer. Yes. Got 40. Ooh, 40 to 40. Let's go to the next one. If rook from f2 takes on b2 check, king takes rook, then queen goes to b4 check. King can only go to c2. Queen goes to b1 check. No, cannot go there. No, can win the pawn. No, cannot win anything. Those things are. Yes, if rook takes on b2, king takes rook, we start with being a little down material because white has two knights for the rook. Pawns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3. Okay, we have two extra pawns, but they're doubled. Material is more or less the same. Main danger, if we do nothing, rook, the white rook on g5 goes to e6, sacrifice, the queen comes to h6, and we have the pawn not going for h6 to h7, so we must do something. But what should that something be? Don't want to sacrifice the queen on a3, seems to be no follow-up. Yes, if the pawn is pinned, but the king can take it. And then, if rook goes, oh, let's see, if rook goes to a1 check, What if rook starts by going to a1? King takes it. Queen takes it. A1 check. Go to b4 and then pawn goes to a5 check. We are almost there, meaning if queen goes to 3 check, king takes it, rook goes to 1 check, king goes to b4, pawn. No, then we can do nothing. It seems the most promising is the rook could go to b2, but then what? Queen to b4, I can't see anything else. And then what? Queen goes to b3. Let's see if this is the answer. Yes, yes. Now queen goes to b3 check. Now we need a nice ending. We have not yet finished. What if queen goes to b2? That's a mate. We got it. 41. Great. Wonderful. What can we do here? If bishop goes to f3, how can the black queen escape? Can only escape on g6. Oh no, h3 or g6. What if the rook goes to e7? Prepares check on, yeah, but the king can go to b8, and even if they check, king escapes on d7. Bishop goes to f3 for white. Queen goes either h3 or g6. I can't see anywhere else. What else? There is no checks anywhere. Rook goes to g1. We just lose the rook. If bishop goes to g3 to prepare f3, not I can see. Let's put the bishop to f3 and hope it's correct. Yes, it's correct. But we need the follow-up. Bishop is checking from before. Can king go anywhere? It can go to e2. Otherwise, we have to deal with exchanges, and no, we better not exchange, because then if the queen takes on d2, then the black queen can take on f3. If the king takes it, it's too far away. Queen take. I think we must send the king from e1 to e2. Yes. Now we got the queen. Good. 42. That was not an easy one. And usually moving the king on a check when you can block the check is not the first thing that comes to your mind. Here we can have a double check for black, because the knight on e5 is blocking the queen on e7. There are two double checks. A knight can go either to f3 or d3. Which is the best? We want to have a nice follow-up. If it goes to the first rank, meaning if after check king goes to d1 or f1, no matter where we put the knight, the next move is a mate. But what if it goes to the second? Then king can take a knight, no matter which of the two we have it. If the queen goes to e1 for a check. Here's the trick. We'll send the knight to d3, check, king goes to d2. If it goes to f1, queen to e1 mate. Here it goes, then bishop goes to g5 check, king will take the knight, and then queen goes to e4 mate. Yes, that's it. They don't even say the whole story, but that is why you go to d3 instead of f3. 43 correct. If we have this correct, we tie. We are doing very well because we still have no errors. We continue till the third wrong one. Here, no, black is to play. You see, the letters go from A to H and the numbers from A to 1. Materially the same, knight, bishop, and 2 pawns. Black is near promotion and white is near promotion. If we take the bishop from d4 takes to 1 on c5, knight takes back. Then we move the pawn to e2, knight goes to d3, and it's not a mate, while white will push the pawn from a6 to a8, so that cannot be the answer. If we directly push the pawn to e2, black can only stop it, excuse me, white can only stop it if he plays the bishop on b4. Otherwise, it's promotion. And if they do, first of all, they open diagonal so we can stop the pawn if it goes to a7 for white, and then we can continue. Of course, we'll not offer the pawn, but we'll continue with the other pawn from f4 to f3. Yes? Now, no, the way they took it, we are promoting. Is there any fork with checks or something like that? No, I think we can just promote and that's it. Not that's it, because the white pawn is that we promote. So what can we do? We cannot go to a5 to check because the knight from b7 will take a queen. If the queen goes to e6 to check, yes, then the queen goes to a6 and we win the pawn. Yes? How can we win it? Because the bishop still protects it. Okay, here's what we'll do. First, we go to a6 with a check. No, we don't. How can we check? Now we go to a6 and threaten the knight on b7. Anything else? I don't see anything else. The queen can also go to c8, which is the best. It goes to c8. Oh, the knight has a fork. From b7 goes to d6, and it's a royal fork. We lose our queen. No, we go here, yes. And now we win the queen. Good. 44. We equalize the best and without any errors. We need one more for a record. Let's see. Can we do it? You see, the first one was 160. The most recent is 23-25. I'm not sure what exactly this means. If queen goes to h7 check, king has to go to d6. Otherwise, they lose the queen. Materially, how are we doing? We have done an exchange and that's it. But okay, we have a little bit better pawn structure. Queen goes to h7 check. We win a pawn, but we want more than that. Queen goes to g6 check. Queen goes to h7 seems the most obvious way to begin. Of course, queen goes because we threaten the queen on c7, and king has only one way to go to d6. Then the rook can go to d1 check. Here we are. I think then we want at least a queen. Rook goes to d1 check. Yes. Here, not so easy to win this queen, because if the rook from d1 takes the knight on d4, the pawn on c4 would just take back. If the queen goes to g6 check, any other way to do check? I cannot see anything else. Queen goes to g6. I mean, there are two candidate moves. Either rook goes to d4 and we lose the rook, but we might have a nice follow-up. If only the pawn was not on h2, queen would go to h2 and would have a skewer diagonal square. But I'm not sure if it will win the queen, but very good chance. Or the queen goes to h6 or g6. These are the candidate moves. Not easy at all. Yep. Any chance a knight goes from f3 to d4, we lose a queen, but then the knight does a mating discover check. Almost. No. Queen goes to d6. What is the follow-up? We have the square on c5 where the king can escape. Oh, we have another problem. We have a check, so we cannot just move a queen and check. We must check with the rook because we have to deal with the check because the knight on d4 checks a king on e2. So let's take it. Yes. Now we have to think what to do. A big problem is, first of all, a queen is under attack. Second, the king can escape on c5 if we're not careful. What if the queen goes to h5? The king cannot escape, but the king can go back. Have something else, yes. If the pawn goes from e4 to e5 check, no matter where the king goes, yes, he will escape the mate, but will win the queen on c7. I think this is it. And now win the queen. 45, that was a tough one. We made the record and still 45 out of 45 without any issues, but it was a tough one. What can we do here? We are threatening the rook on a1 materially. Queen, two rooks, two light pieces, and we're down 2 pawns, the black. But if we take the pawn on b2, we might win the rook. But then, we can easily, if we take the bishop on f4, don't really win because uh, we will win a piece if we take on, because if queen takes an bishop from f2 takes on f4, then bishop d6 takes f4. But what if white, instead of taking back, they send their pawn from? I think yes, but then we have to check with the knight on g4. Let's see. Yes, check, check, and now we got a piece. Good, not easy. 46. You see, the first few ones were easy back ranks or one move mates, but as we go on, they become tougher and tougher. What's happening here is that if the bishop could go to a4 to check, it is made, but if it tries to go there, it's going to be captured. But 46, we have a new record. You may have seen that it shows that 59 is my real record. Will it show here? No, it doesn't show, but sometimes it showed 59, which is not a real record because I did it once when there was an error in the puzzles and the same puzzles were repeated again and again. And of course, it's quite easy to get 59 once we got them correct. We have 46, so today is a great day, even if we have the next three wrong. But let's hope we can go even further. How far can we go? 2409 is the previous one, the highest we've ever done. We're near the 4 O's. Oh, it's tricky, yes. If we sacrifice the bishop, if bishop goes to a4 check, king takes it, nothing else. Queen goes to d1 check. And queen goes to c2 and then it's mate. Yes. We got it, 47. Let's see how many more can we do. What's going to happen? Let's assume that the rook from a2 goes to a1 check. My king will take the pawn. What if exchange rooks? And then we start pushing our f pawn and white will push the a pawn. And we have the advantage that the king cannot help too much because they have to be careful with the h pawn. If they take it, they'll win 2-3 moves. We go. Exchange. Then c5, a4, c4, a5, c3. I think that's it. Yes. White wasted the move. Now, is it this one? If we go, neither the king nor the pawn can do anything. Let's see. If we go c4, g2, c3, f2, c2, e2, we promote it. If the pawn pushes c4, a4, c3, a5, I think that's it. Yes, we got it. 48. We finished 4 O's. First time we ever did it and without any errors. Oh, that's so wonderful. Now, rook goes to f8 check and king goes to h7. Pawn goes to e5 check. Pawn goes to g6 for black. This is the answer. Materially, rook, we're down a rook. We're down at least a rook. So if plus 2 pawns. If this doesn't work, we're out of luck. So first move, rook goes to f8 check. Yes. Now, next follow-up, the only follow-up I can see is pawn goes to e5. Yes. Here, if rook goes to f7 check, king escapes. But if bishop goes from g5 to f6, next move is mate, and white cannot save themselves because the pawn on g6 is pinned. So the black king has nowhere to go. We got it, 49. Here, we can have a discover check, but we are going to lose our queen. Rook c1 takes c2, so that cannot be the answer. The queen is under attack. Materially, we have 2 pieces for the rook and 2 extra pawns. So materially, we're a little bit better, but with queens on the board, no guarantee for a win. White, if game goes on, white can either mess up, or even if, because the past we assume we're doing everything correct, white may have a perpetual at some point. That's why we cannot rely on the little extra material that we have. We have 9, 14, 20, 24. Black is 21. Yes, we have 24 versus 21, but we cannot rely on that. We cannot even hope to have a royal fork, meaning we remove the knight, put it somewhere, and after we lose our queen, the knight can do no. But if the knight goes to d3 check, we lose a queen, check with the rook, and then we win two rooks for the queen. Not bad. We increase our advantage a little bit. Is this enough to give us a win? It's not bad to take two rooks for the queen, but I can't see anything else. Let's see if this is the answer. Yes. Make sure that this is the answer. There's no other check to do. Yes, that's it. We got two rooks for the queen. So a little advantage becomes a little bit more, not guaranteeing win, but we finished 50. Just to tell you that chess.com had a kind of a puzzle contest that to make it to the final round, you had to do 50, but in 5 minutes, not unlimited time as we have now. Who knows how much time has passed since we started the video? If queen goes to e3 check, king goes to, I think here we have what's called the smothered mate. Let's see. Yes? No, don't even smother. Now be careful. If queen goes from e3 to e1 check, rook stops it. Yes, we have more than enough material. No, we got it wrong. They don't like our answer. I thought we had made, but so we have after 50 correct, the first wrong. Here, if bishop goes from g5 to e7, the queen is under attack and only escape to a5. We'll put a pawn on b4 and the queen can go where? It has a lot of squares to go a6. It can only go to a6 and then we have the fork. I think that's it. Now pawn goes to b4 because we're under check. I was hoping to a6 would really have the fork. Here we don't have the fork. Ah, yes, if knight goes to b5, after queen escapes, knight to c7 is made. The only problem being that queen can go to c3 and check. King goes to e2. I think that's it. Queen goes to, there is a way, not an easy one. Yes. The bishop now. If we get the free move, king can go anywhere, then and be safe from checks, then knight goes to c7, it's mate. King can only go to e2. What else can happen? We can have one of our knights take the bishop, but don't win anything. If we go to e2, what is the follow-up? I think that's it. I mean, the way king will escape, not very easily, but will escape. No, wrong. Second wrong. We got 50 correct and now two wrong. Can we do more? Let's see. Now it's black turn to play. If bishop goes to F5 check, at least we won the rook on H7. How are we material? 10, 16, 18, 21, 9, 19, 25, 28. We're down 7 points. Even if we win the rook, doesn't mean too much. But where can the king go? The king can only go to... I can't see how else can we start. Then the bishop can go maybe to E3 and check. Let's see here. Yes. Here we have to be careful how to continue. But the only check I can see that makes any sense, because yes, the rook, if it goes to C3, will be taken by the knight on B1. If the bishop goes to E3 check, the knight can block it on D2. How do we continue? Of course, we can take the rook, but we have 21, and white will have 9, 14, 20, 23. There'll still be 2 pawns ahead. We can take, and also, if we take the rook on A1 and we threaten the rook on H7, we cannot, of course, take the H7, because then we also lose a bishop on D4, so our advantage becomes even less. If bishop goes to E3, what else can do? But then the knight can go to E2. Can we, if we threaten the queen, we cannot. Ooh, here we are. It's not easy to see it. If the rook goes from G3 to G1, we pin the queen. So we win a queen. Yes, but still, okay, it's nice to win the queen, but queen for a rook. Not that it was too much material. I think this is the... Nope. So we got 50 correct, it's a new record. 50 out of 50, and then we had 3 wrong. Let's see the 3 wrong ones. The most advanced were 26, 95, 27, 23, and 77, 71. They say it's all-time 2. In reality, it's all-time 1, because the ones that we passed it with 59, it just... let's see under not ideal conditions. Now, let's see the 2695. What does you do wrong? What was the correct answer? Yeah, it was a smothered mate. Yes. Yes. Ooh! Here it is. There was a bishop far away that would have taken a queen if went to E1. That's why we should have gone to C1. So, it was not... what we need to do now is we need to a little bit minimize this. Closed up. Yes, I need this one to close. Okay. Let's see the next one, the second. Yes, what we had not seen. Yeah, yes, I had missed the bishop here. So if queen goes here, it will be taken by the bishop. That's what I had missed. Close. Okay, good. Now let's see the next one, the second one. This was a complicated one. Had a lot of moves to think. One, correct. Second, correct. Third, correct. Four. Ah, they wanted to take with the knight. The reason I didn't do it, no, is because of the bishop on e7. I thought I would have a mate. So this is the second one we missed. And let's see the last one. Yes, the check correct. Okay, there was a combination, both win the rook and win the queen, the pin. There was a way to win both. I'm not okay. So let's redo it once again. Yes, we take the rook. Ah, the rook is not to be save itself, has to leave, and then we have this pin. Otherwise, if queen took it, would win the other rook. Yes, that is it. Okay, that's wonderful. We got 50. We got a best score, a new record. Hence, this evening, if all goes okay, I'm participating in the second round of the Quizzes Club, the amateur team event. Let's see what's going to happen. And if all goes okay and I have the score sheet with me, next video I'm going to tell you what happened at Floral Park, New York this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching. Thanks to the views, the likes, the comments, the subscribers. This is grecochess. I'm Harilas Aniziris, and for now, goodbye.